Welcome everybody to the TELedvisors session for May. We're so pleased today to have two people who were the past Best Paper Conference winners. So that's Dr. Beth Beckman and Dr. Lynn Gribble. So they'll be speaking to us a little later. But to start us off, we have Dr. Stephanie Wilson, who is from the University of Sydney, who's one of the conference organisers. Before we start, as is our custom, I want to acknowledge the custodians of the lands from where we're joining today, and particularly on this sorry day, we remember the systematic racism and oppression of this continent's First Peoples under government policies, and we pay our heartfelt respects to the stolen generations. So, very pleased to hear today from Dr. Stephanie Wilson, who's the Deputy Director of Business Co-Design at the University of Sydney Business School. Stephanie's here to represent the conference team responsible for submissions and proceedings, and I'd love to ask Stephanie to share her slides and to talk us through some of the themes and focuses for today.
Okay, thank you very much, Penny. I'll just share my slides now. You just have to let me know if you can see these okay. They're loading up.
Yep, okay.
Perfect. Fantastic. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation today. It's really great to have the opportunity to come along and have a brief chat to you all. Really, I'm just going to give a bit of an introduction to our USyd-hosted ASCILITE 2022 conference, but very happy, obviously, to take questions afterwards. And to be part of the discussion. I think I can stay for half an hour of this session, so I'll get started. And as I said, please note down any questions that you have. Really do my best to answer those for you. So as you can see here, our ASCILITE 2022 conference with the theme of Reconnect is about reconnecting relationships through technology. I've got the conference website there. Some of you might have had a chance to browse through the conference website already. Some of you may not have jumped on there, but obviously there's the full conference website there. So any of the details that I'm sharing with you now, you can go into more detail when you get a chance to have a look at that. Okay, so just a little bit more on the theme for this year's conference. So as I mentioned, it really is about reconnecting relationships through technology and focusing on all those different sort of relationships that are key to student success. So, we've come out of an interesting 2 years. We know that we've had some great challenges with trying to maintain teacher presence, student presence with each other, all those sorts of things. So really, this is a fantastic opportunity to share our learnings about what's working really well and what we can still do better in this space. So on that theme of relationships, our sub-themes are about reconnecting students with educators, reconnecting students with each other, with purpose, and then more broadly, reconnecting people with educational technology and the community with the future campus, because obviously our learning environment as a whole looks very different to what it did a couple of years ago. So they're the main themes. Of course, there's a fuller description of each of those sub-themes on the website for you to explore. In this conference, there's a number of ways for you to participate. I know that you're here today to have a bit of a brainstorm with each other about potential individual or collaborative papers as sort of authors and presenters, but just wanted to flag with you as well that there's also an opportunity for you to, if you aren't already a reviewer for ASCILITE, to sign up as a reviewer. We sort of love people's involvement in that area as well. There is a place on the website for you to sign up if you're interested in becoming a reviewer. And I guess well, there's a couple of advantages to doing that. One is that, of course, you'd be acknowledged and be visible on the conference website, but also it's just, again, another way to learn about sort of new and emerging work that's happening, across all participants. So, yeah, we hope that some of you might be interested in doing that. The conference is online and in person, so fantastic opportunity for those of us who can attend face-to-face to connect with each other, but of course we can also connect online. So thinking about our own ways of our own relationships and connecting with each other as well as thinking about it in terms of our presentations. Okay, so some of you who have been to ASCILITE before will be familiar with these types of session formats. I'm sorry that I'm just gave you a little screenshot from the website there, but really, obviously, part of today is about thinking about which session type will help you to communicate your work most effectively, your research or your practice, and allow you to facilitate the kind of discussion that you want to have with your colleagues that will be beneficial to you and beneficial to them as well. So, of course, we have full papers. They're the 10-page ones, the concise papers, which are half that length. Posters, panel sessions, the extended abstracts, which are in the form of pecha-kucha presentations, and of course the pre-conference workshops, which happen the day before the conference presentations begin. So they're the main ones, and of course, again, all of the details, the templates, everything you'll need to actually build your submission is available on the website. And we're also just about to release some more technical how-to guides around sort of using the system, registering and using the system when you actually make your submission. Okay, I'll move on. Yeah, so I think Penny did say we would talk about what a dream presentation might look like, and I think the best way to think about this is really just to think about the presentations that you've sat in across many conferences. I think we all have a sense of a presentation that is sort of more or less dreamy. But basically, yeah, I had a chat to our broader conference organising committee, and really it came down to sort of us thinking, well, encouraging you to think about what is it you feel most passionate about sharing, and thinking about relationships in relation to your own presentations as well. So you might consider in your session how you might group people with common interests to engage in what it is that you're sharing, or connecting what you're talking about with the interests and experiences of the audience. So yeah, really thinking about your relationship to others that are there, and how you can both learn together around the topic that you would like to share. Of course, we know that the best sessions engage colleagues actively. So thinking beyond turning your written submission into a presentation. Obviously, we want the presentation to be something other than a delivery of the written submission. Yeah, and you can think creatively about how you'd like to do that. And of course, we also know that that participants are likely to leave a session feeling quite satisfied if they've had a chance to really contextualise what you're talking about in relation to their own research and practice, and therefore take something a little bit concrete away. Leave with some kind of key insight, reflection, artefact, whatever it might be, so they've had a chance to really, really connect with what you're talking about. Probably no surprises there. And just a quick note on the ASCILITE community too, for those of you who haven't been to the conference before, clearly it's a fantastic opportunity to reconnect with each other. Some of us, won't have had a chance to attend a face-to-face conference and have that opportunity for a while. I believe also that the ASCILITE community is very supportive of early career researchers and practitioners, so everybody is welcome and supported in the space. And yeah, it's a very friendly and supportive conference community. So we really hope that you can join us, and it'd be fantastic to see many of you there. You're not meant to read this slide, but just to let you know that we also have, that's key dates on your right-hand side there. So on the website, you'll see all those key dates. So you'd be aiming for the 2nd of July to get your submissions in, which is, I think, a little over a month's time. So that's really all I wanted to share as an introduction, but very, very happy to take questions from anyone, if there are any.
Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Pleasure.
Any questions? What was anything come up in the chat? Dan's quite keen on reviewing his own paper.
Stephanie, just a quick question. Is it only face-to-face this year?
No,
or is
it's both face-to-face and online.
Okay, so there's an online component as well. Good.
Yep. No, yeah, I think we definitely have to cater for those two scenarios. Yeah.
Do you have any plans for social events?
I would have to defer to the sub-team that's looking after the social event, our little subcommittee looking after that to know. I absolutely would say yes, there are social events attached to the conference, but yeah, a lot. Keep an eye out on the website, because there's obviously going to be announcements about keynote speakers and all sorts of things coming up shortly, and I'm sure more information about some of those additional activities attached to the conference. Yeah, so sorry, I can't elaborate on that.
Wonderful. Yes, okay, that's fantastic. Okay, well, if we don't have any more questions, and I think Stephanie said she'd stick around for a little bit longer, and we've also got Alex with us, of course, we may move on to our next presenters now. So obviously we thought, you know, if you're going to write a paper, maybe it would be a good idea to have a listen to what the winners of the Best Paper Award last year have to say about writing a paper for ASCILITE, the process, and everything in between. So we have with us Dr. Beth Beckman, who is the Director of Beth Beckman and Associates, which is providing specialist higher education leadership and support to individuals and institutions for professional recognition, mentoring and innovation. She's an honorary associate professor at the ANU and an Australian National Teaching Fellow. And we also have Dr. Lynn Gribble, who is a senior lecturer in the School of Management and Government of the UNSW Business School, who has coupled award-winning teaching with a strong research interest in the world of work. And their paper last year addressed the experience of developing and mentoring professional portfolios for CMOLT, Certified Membership of the Association of Learning Technology. And we'll share a link to their paper. So over to you, Beth and Lynn.
Thank you, Colin. Welcome everyone, it's lovely to meet you all. And I'd just like to pay my respects to the Ngunnawal people and the Ngambri people on whose lands I'm talking to you from today. So I have a long history, it probably seems longer and longer, in teaching at university, advising in TEL, education and academic development, scholarship and innovation specifically related to TEL. So that was sort of my driver in 2011 for me to do CMALT, because I was interested and I joined the Association of Learning Technology. There was nothing like that in Australia at the time. ASCILITE was obviously there, but ASCILITE wasn't doing this professional recognition. So I've been involved. I wanted to know more, and I wanted the peer review status, because at ANU at the time, technology enhanced learning, I think Colin came a bit later, but he can still just do it. It wasn't really understood. It wasn't really a driving force. So I felt I needed some kind of esteem recognition from outside. So I did my CMALT, and ASCILITE got in touch with me and said, hey Beth, we were actually thinking of making this part of the process for ASCILITE. What do you think? And so I actually informed that adoption of CMALT Australasia by ASCILITE way back in 2011. In 2014, Colin mentioned I got an Australian National Teaching Fellowship, and that was in the field of professional recognition, specifically driving around HEA fellowships at that time, and that's what my mentoring consultancy is now in. But the CMALT has remained very important to me, because obviously technology enhanced learning remains important, and in 2020 it was time to update my CMALT, and hey, guess what, the whole world was oriented towards technology enhanced learning. So that was a really good process for me to be doing, to be thinking about technology at that time. And then I'll hand over to Lynn.
Thanks, Beth. And so my journey is that I'm an academic with a long history of online teaching in the business management, organisational behaviour space. So I was actually telling somebody this morning, 16 years online at University of New South Wales. But very early on, I became focused on tele-innovations because I wanted to look at how to improve student learning. My other thing is about sharing those innovations with people and working with TELedvisors so that they can, I apologise, that's driven by UNSW and I can't solve it. That's driven by a way of them saying, how do we partner together to ensure that we use technology in a way that supports teaching and supports student learning. So I feel like, despite being an academic, I spend my time sort of bridging between the two. So I think that one of the things I need to say is, as we started working on this paper, for me, this is the people we meet along the way. So I am very fortunate and proud to say that Beth Beckman has been my mentor for the last 2.5 years, and a mentoring relationship turned into a collaboration opportunity. So Beth had updated her CMALT in 2020. I'd been walking down that professional recognition path, awards path, and Beth said to me, you should look at this. And I said, I don't know if I've got the experience. And she said, yeah, you've got the experience. Because it's written a little bit like you have to be a technologist, and I'm a teacher who uses technology. So I joined ASCILITE, started to look into what it was going to take, decided to attend the conference, and we decided that we would present a paper. And as the conference theme was Back to the Future, it was such an appropriate description of what Beth and I had experienced in our collaborative mentoring towards me earning my CMALT. So despite there being a 10-year gap from when Beth applied for original CMALT and then she updated, and then I was applying, and we sort of started out thinking, oh, there's been this huge change in TEL. As we started to put it down, we realized that there had been change, but there was still a lot in common. And there were far fewer key changes than expected. So when I say that, there might have been a new piece of software and it might have been a little bit more whiz bang, but really the student outcome or student impact was as close as it previously was. We started to come to the view that everything old was new again, and that really started to form our paper and how we were working. Beth?
So we thought then this comparison of writings. I've done a lot of conference theme development in the past, and I try to really pay attention to conference themes because I know the organisers have put it in. It make it much easier if people are looking at the themes when they are allocating papers to streams. So I did look at that very carefully, and I thought, okay, so Back to the Future, 2011, 2021, and we were finding, as Lynn said, old is new again. But I felt it was really important to place our discussion, because of my background, in that context of CMALT as professional recognition. And because I was the professional recognition specialist, I investigated that aspect and wrote a short literature review in relation to professional recognition in general, and then CMALT. So the requirements, how other people approach CMALT from a mentoring perspective. And that's typical, this backgrounding of your topic. It's really important that you don't assume the audience knows anything just because they're at ASCILITE, just because they're interested in technology enhanced learning. They may not have heard of CMALT. So you need to give them enough to really not force them to have to go and Google things and find out other things. They should have it all in the paper. I also felt it was really important that we were reflecting our two different voices across the time frame, because 2011, 2021, Back to the Future, this was a really important aspect we wanted to address. And also acknowledge the fact that a CMALT application, like a lot of the professional recognition work I do, is about personal reflective narratives. Okay, and that is the way in which they are constructed. And many people don't understand what that means. And I thought it would be a bit odd for us to be writing everything in the third person when we were talking about a personal narrative structure. So we decided that we would have a personal narrative approach for the second half of the paper. But then I realized we needed to do another little literature review about what personal narratives mean and why they are. It was relevant, not so much for the professional recognition, but for the paper, that we could use that personal narrative in the paper as well, as it is a standard research methodology. Again, people might not always know that. And so we then decided our focus on the first half of the paper was to make it very scholarly, but engaging. So that's always the way, you know, scholarly, based in the literature, but engaging, and hopefully taking people on that journey through the literature and the ideas. And then the second half was to make it really personal and relevant to the theme and the conference. So the theme being Back to the Future, the conference being on technology enhanced learning, ASCILITE being about CMALT Australasia. So we wanted to very much bring that in. And first drafts, you know, for everybody, you need to allow enough time for this. And I think for once, we actually did allow enough time, you know. The first half of the paper, you know, all these literature reviews, that can blow out, you know. And so even though you're really, really, sorry, my puppy here is dreaming and she's making little noises. The first half of the paper, the drafting, it can blow out. And so you have to be really careful to cull it and to be really, really cut it down to the bare bones, So actually we originally planned a concise paper, didn't we, Lynn? But it became a full paper because we had so much to say. And that was quite an interesting decision, because we actually had to say, is this scholarly enough for a full paper? And so it wasn't an easy decision. It wasn't, oh, we've just gone over the concise paper limit. We actually thought about it as different products for the audience. So, Lynn, tell us about the challenges of collaborative writing.
So I think that that's a really great point that Beth makes. We started to put it down and Beth said, I think we've got a full paper. And that really links to these challenges and processes of collaborative writing. So I do a lot of collaborative writing, and people are going to talk about the challenges, but I think the first thing I need to say is that while the challenges are obvious, start with trust. If you're going to work with somebody, you've really got to trust them, and they also have to trust you, and you both have to have voice in this process. So obviously, as Beth said, we reached this problem with we had more to say. People who know us both would go, oh, how surprising not. So that real balance between being scholarly and reflective was something we needed to bring in. And then we also needed to be prepared to cut some good ideas and interesting background. We had to sort of say, so what is our point? So I felt like what I say to students all the time, this is very nice, but is it really important? So the actual writing part for us was always a joy, and I do work closely with Beth. So that's sending drafts back and forth. But one of the things I would say there is be very clear on what we were asking of each other. So Beth would send me a paper and I would read it and I would say, okay, so am I reading this time to say, do I fundamentally agree with the contents? Now I'll read it the next time and say, is there anything that I want to look at for the focus or the style or the flow or the, have we got it in the order that we wanted to do? And the one thing that we were very clear on was that when we were giving feedback on our narrative sections, because they were personal to us, the feedback there was just about, I'm not so sure I understand or I'm not so sure I follow. So that meant we had to be very clear on what we were reviewing and how we were reviewing it. The other thing is that this links back to what Stephanie was saying about making sure that you've got something, a takeaway. So we wanted to provide our outcome was a concrete understanding of the differences of what we had found between Beth doing hers originally, her update, and me doing mine. And what we wanted to do was to put that concisely in a table so that people could look and say, okay, these are the sorts of things that you might put in your CMALT. The other thing is, you know, Beth and I do a number of presentations together, so we always have fun practicing and working out, you know, who's going to say what and what we're going to talk about. And of course, the joy of the surprise of the best paper put a bit of pressure on us for the presentation. It was like, oh, hang on, we better make sure the presentation's really good. But I think that the one thing I'd say is that while the dance of collaboration can seem daunting, it's really fun. And I really encourage you to think about somebody you've been working with and how the two of you together can have voice, or the three or the four of you together can have voice. And as I said, I work a lot collaboratively, whether it's with our teaching advisors, whether it's with Beth, whether it's another co-writer, because it's always more fun together, bouncing those ideas back and forward, and you can really produce something quite different than if you'd have just sat in your own quiet mind doing it. So, how can each writer have voice, Wendy? I'm happy for Beth to talk about this, but I'll quickly say before I hand back to Beth, it comes back to that trust. So Beth and I have been working together for a long time, but even I've been recently working with our TELedvisors at UNSW, and we sat down and said, how would we best like to do this? And so often I will write it, they will come back and say, oh, it's this, or they will write. So somebody always starts, somebody needs to say, then this is the feedback, and then also how we will give that feedback. What are we giving that feedback for? Flow, content, grammar. Don't bundle it all in together. Be really clear so that the person understands where that content's coming from. So Beth, I don't know if you have any other thoughts.
No, that's our presentation. I think let's go to questions, and we've already started answering them. Well done, Lynn. But any comments or questions? Go for it.
Just a quick question about the about the collaboration process. Thanks, first of all. That was really good. So when each individual writer has a voice, is there like a tension between that and having a coherent paper? How do you kind of marry the two, I suppose, is the question.
I think in our case, because I have the official role as mentor and I have a lot of writing experience. I mean, I've been running writing workshops for decades, you know, and working with and writing, you know, everything from signs to leaflets. So writing, I was a professional writer, or am a professional writer. So that made it easy in a sense, because there was no question, you know, I was going to look after the grammar and the structure and those sorts of things. So I think that is really a good thing to decide at the beginning. Who has the best background? It doesn't mean that Lynn wasn't learning on the way and contributing and saying, this paragraph is just too long, Beth, or this paragraph, what do you think? Because it was my job to listen, you know. It's not just because you're taking that overall responsibility doesn't mean that you're not listening. So it's very typical. I mean, it's classic good community of practice behavior, you know, so you're listening.
And I would echo that, because in some instances I am the person who's doing what Beth's doing with somebody else. And I think that it comes down to that, everybody feeling honoured and respected, so that if you're going to have a comment, it's not coming from, or a correction, you have to be prepared to say, we're in this together and we both want a great product. It's not about who says this or they say that. It's what's the point we're trying to make? How do we best articulate it? And it was fascinating for me. I was actually part of a review panel last week where at the end we had to produce a paper, And the chair and I sat down and we went bang, 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 bang. And he said, you're really used to working collaboratively. And everybody else around the table just said, whoa, we've never seen that. And I said, you've got to be able to do this under pressure. This is an academic skill to be able to sort of say, what is it? Can we live with it? Is this a better word? And just, you know, treat it as a process of finalizing. So get your ideas down, and then the finalizing process is different.
Thank you. I have a quick question. So you mentioned that initially you were thinking about this as a short paper, and then you decided that you had enough to say to justify a full paper. But one of the questions that you asked yourself was, is this scholarly enough? I was just wondering if you might speak to what you see as the difference in scholarliness of a short paper versus a longer paper.
I think in this case it was because we were moving into two areas. As I said, there's the professional recognition literature and how this professional recognition is now very much based on reflective narratives, and that is a contested space. People are now saying that, you know, it's almost exclusive. If you don't know how to write in this style, you won't win teaching awards, you know. So the actual writing style is important. Any of you who've been in for teaching awards, you know exactly what I mean by that. At the same time, talking about the reflective narrative, and not every journal will accept, you know, a paper with reflective narrative. So although the conference has a different context, I was also wary that by putting in personal narrative, people say, oh, that's just their anecdotal view, that's just lazy writing, you know, it's not scientific writing, it's not academic writing, and we don't want those kind of papers. So being able to actually frame why we were putting in the first person personal narrative about our two journeys through CMALT, apart from connecting it always back to the theme, was about making a scholarly assertion that this is an appropriate way to show you what personal narrative means, because that is the style required by the CMALT. And so the difference was that I did not want too much scholarship, because then it becomes a paper without such a strong takeaway message. We wanted the message, and the message I think we wanted was, hey, do your CMALT. And, you know, and it's not so daunting, it's interesting, it will give you some reflection into your career, but also this fascinating thing that we were both looking at Moodle enhancement 10 years apart. Universities were still doing Moodle enhancement, you know, we haven't got there yet. And yet the other big issue, which I, you know, 2011 was concerned with, which was using learner analytics. Oh no, they actually wanted to in my university, all access to learner analytics and just say it was a privacy issue. And Lynn uses it day in, day out now for all sorts of really good teaching and learning reasons. And so I think that's the other thing, we felt that we could communicate that better. But the danger was, is that anecdotal? So that's why I think that, you know, in a concise paper, you can skim a little bit, you know, you're still scholarly, but to get to that takeaway message, which is new, original thought, or a new way of looking at things, you just can't afford to spend too much time. So it was when we realized we had 2 literature reviews, they're very tiny, but they're there, then that's when, you know, we could have cut it back. I'm very, very good at cutting back words, but we felt we'd actually lose something. And so that's why we chose it.
I'll add
Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and I'll add to that one of the things that I think for somebody like me, who is a practitioner, so I'm a teaching academic rather than a research academic, this really gave me the opportunity to show my scholarly practice and to embed it in a scholarly way, not just I'm reporting my practice. So I was thrilled to go down that path with Beth and walk alongside that path. And for me, once we saw that, it was just, excuse the expression, a no-brainer to go forward, because to understand how to situate my practice in that way. And as we did that together, it really validated, and it also showed me another way to think about reporting practice in a scholarly fashion.
Fantastic. Are there any other questions? Or did you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share, Beth or Lynn?
Do it. Present. Always present something. Always review something. It's absolutely a waste of space going to a conference without presenting. It's nerve-wracking, and always at every conference I always think, why did I, agree to present? Why did I put myself forward? I could have just come here and enjoyed myself. But it is very powerful, because it gives you that space to really explore a topic. I think what was probably disappointing for us, because it was online last year, was that normally you just go and have a cup of tea and then meet people, and people come up to you and talk about it. For audience members to make that leap, talking about psychology of conferences now, to make that leap to actually email us after a paper when they're rushing straight into the next paper, that's, that didn't really happen. A couple, it did happen with a couple, but not so much. So that would have been, I think that's the only downside of doing a virtual, presentation, having a virtual conference. But yeah, go for it. Absolutely go for it.
Right. So we had a question in the chat from Alex, just asking for advice for a new or early career presenter who might be nervous, and then replied saying, pair up with someone more experienced, maybe start out with a poster. There is also the ASCILITE Community Mentor Program, which is probably worth doing. And I would personally just add to that the ASCILITE conference is kind of just a big teddy bear. Like, everyone's very supportive. No one wants to see, no one wants to see you fail in your presentation. So, yeah, you're not going to be dealing with a harsh room. People are pretty nice.
And my classic, if I was giving a workshop on presentation, do not just think you have to present the paper. So I skimmed over all the literature review stuff. We had a very minimal thing, because that's in the paper. ASCILITE is really good about getting proceedings out, although, yep, there is a spelling mistake with my name, which we had to correct. And but I think the really important thing is make the presentation talk to your main takeaway message, the exciting new thing. So, don't turn it into scholarly for scholarly's sake. It's about really communicating. That's what you're trying to do. Communicate and share with people who are there at the conference because they love TELadvising and TEL in general. And so actually talk to them about what is important. Don't try to just recreate the paper, because you just don't have enough time.
Lynn and Beth, do you, question to you both, do you have any plans to build on this and to do other projects coming out of this?
We are the ongoing project team, I think, is where I start. So I'll start by saying I work, as I said, a lot in collaboration, and there's one particular group I work with, and after I say hello, they actually pause now because they wait for me to say, I have an idea. And I think that Beth and I are constantly looking for ideas and constantly saying, oh, we were talking about this. The CMULT for us is both really important. So I saw Beth answer earlier to Dan that, yes, Dan, she has a plan to, make CMULT like SFHEA or HEA fellowship. And I too share that dream, because I think that what CMULT does is it stands us apart as technology enabled. And That, I think, is the future. So I know that's a bit of a both ways answer, Hank, but it is yes and some. So Beth's probably got other ideas as well.
Well, so we are mentoring somebody at Lynn's University, at UNSW, to go for CMALT. So Lynn is going to be the sort of mentor, and I'm going to be the writing support. So this is going to be quite interesting. But from the writing point of view, I literally had an idea last week to ask a lot of my clients who are moving into this scholarly space. As Lynn said, it's hard for them as teachers to know how to present scholarly. And I thought I'd actually create a blog page so they don't have to create their own blogs. I've been recommending to people to create their own blogs as evidence of outreach for their promotion application, etc. That's a big ask. So what I've suddenly thought is I can ask individuals, I might label any of you out there, to write those blogs and to actually put those, so actually mentor them to write, 400 to 800 words about an innovation they've done or with a tiny bit of scholarship, in other words, reference or two to the relevant literature, and actually to highlight those people, but without asking them to do a full blog site on their own, and this would be across disciplines, across institutions. So I'm actually quite excited about it as a thought, because writing in a scholarly way, which I've done often by working with people like Lynn in a very, very in-depth way. So at the moment I'm writing about optometry simulated patients, for example, which is not my field in any way, but to mentor that. But I think maybe a smaller start, a shorter, easier starting point would be great. So that's my latest idea, Hank. And Lynn is obviously in line for writing about that. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Just mindful of time. So we did say we were going to leave a little bit of a space for people to talk about ideas that they might have and create opportunities for collaboration. I think we might actually end the recording before that. So I will once again thank Beth and Lynn for sharing your experiences and your advice and your insights. It's really been invaluable. Before we get on to talking about collaborations, Wendy, you just wanted to speak briefly about the reading group that we've sort of had running?
Yeah, thanks, Colin, and hi, Beth and Lynn. What you just said, Beth, is a perfect intro into what I'm about to share. So Penny's already put the link to the Advisor blog, and you were saying about writing in a scholarly way and starting small. In May, we had a reading which we shared, so you'll see the May 2022 reading activity is the first entry on that blog, and it wasn't by a TELedvisor or somebody currently in our community, but what we want to do for June and ongoing is to promote TELedvisor writing and do that as a reading, so that each month we would have a reading. And last month in May we've been using Hypothesis, which has been fantastic as a way of annotating the web. So what we're looking for is TELedvisors writings, not too long. They're open access because not all of our members, including me, have current access to journals, etc., and that are happy to have a conversation around it. So that's what we're looking for June and ongoing, and what we're really encouraging. I'm working with Keith Heggett on this, and if anybody has any blogs that they've written, any book chapters that might be open access, we'd really encourage you to submit them through the TELedvisors Teams channel, or of course you can email me direct or any one of the other TELedvisors crew here, Hank, Colin, Penny, or Keith. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up the recording part. Please do stick around. And again, thank you for coming.